I would like to welcome all. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. I really hope you and your family, friends are all okay, even in this strange period. So welcome to our webinar. This is one of the many webinar GMI is doing, and today is conducted by myself, but mainly by Tino. So very soon I will leave the speech to him. Okay, I say that we are conducting several webinars on many subjects, mainly ranging from functional safety to intrinsic safety to cybersecurity. Sometimes we run webinar about the application of our specific components, the GMI design and supply. Today, the topic is functional safety and specifically safety manual. So we have the chance to have Tino with us, one of the most expert I know in functional safety. I know him since 20 years, and we are talking about functional safety since that time in our previous experience as well. Tino is recognized by TUV as a proven TUV trainer. We will talk about our functional safety training program. He is following together with GMI as a sponsor. And before to leave the speech to Tino, give me the chance to really talk about few minutes, not too much, not more, about GMI. What GMI is doing, we are delivering to the field oil and gas, chemical and petrochemical, field equipment, and all our products deal with safety, whether either it is a functional safety or intrinsic safety. We have 40-year experience on that field. We are an Italian company. We have full production here in Italy, and while of course we are present with several offices and subsidiaries around the world. You can find a GMI wherever it is needed. These are some numbers. Okay, we have 10 offices. Where we do not have our office, we have a partner and distributor. And just to give some number, we have, of course, thousands of installation. And since we are talking about functional safety, we are conducting together with Tino something like 20 functional safety training and cybersecurity training or intrinsic safety training, 20 per year around the world. Today, this is mainly done virtually. Hopefully, very soon we will come back in person. Even the sign we are receiving, it is not maybe pushing in that direction. On the other hand, I was just talking to Tino. He is experiencing or is doing very good experience even with this training to be done online. Okay, of course, as we deal with safety, and safety means safety of people, of the human life, of the environment, of the assets of a company. Of course, quality, it is one of the utmost important things. And in fact, we do full testing of all our product before it is coming out from the production or coming in to the customer, and we have complete traceability of any components we use and any components we deliver to the market. Of course, quality means certificates. We have full range of, let me say, global certification or even local certification. This will grant to our customers that they can use our product worldwide. As promised, I have been very short. This is a one page, which is indicating GMI portfolio, ranging from intrinsic safe barrier up to loop indicators. Most of these items, if not all, are ADIS certified as functional safety equipment or intrinsic safety or both of them. Last bullet is not a product, it is a kind of services we provide, thanks to Tino, who is also our functional safety director. So we provide services and consultancies for functional safety, with the training, with the consultancies, specific consultancies, as well for intrinsic safety and cybersecurity. We may have the possibility later on that Tino will say something about that, on how we can support you and our customer in that field. So this is just one page, very small page, indicating the kind of customer GMI has, ranging from system vendor up to end user and passing through APC and OEM. You will before to leave the speech to Tino, I want to mention some further things, like you will receive this PDF presentation, in PDF format. You will have also the chance to review this webinar or even other webinars that were conducted before through our YouTube channel. You will have during the webinar the chance to ask questions through the question and answer button. So I will, while Tino will talk, I will monitor that and I will interrupt Tino to raise the question you are ready to provide. And very last, after this webinar, after this presentation, we will have a second presentation where we collected a few questions that you raised during the registration. So we will go through that question and we ask Tino to provide feedback on that. So as promised, I hope I was sufficiently short, and I'm ready now to leave the speech to Tino. So thanks, Tino, and you are free to start.
Okay, thank you, Mauro. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning to some of you, depending on where in the world you're based. Today's topic for GMI, as Mauro was saying, we have a range of webinars done over the last 2 years. This is my last one before Christmas, so this is the good news for myself, at least. So this webinar topic today is called Safety Manual, and there are a few items that you may or may not be aware of. The first one that I want to start with is the Safety Manual for the products, which is a mandatory, means a normative requirement for all the vendors or all the manufacturers claiming that they provide you with a certain, let's say, SIL integrity or a SIL interface. So every system or interface which claims an assessment based on the 61508 shall provide you with a safety manual that is a normative requirement from April 2010. And the safety manual content is described in Annex D, which is one of the annexes from Part 2, which is the hardware section of the 61508. That is what we say here in this first bullet. Both the IEC 61508 Part 2, which is the hardware part, and also the software Part 3, will have a normative Annex D, and both of them are describing that the vendors, they can only comply when they provide us with a safety manual. So like GMI, like Mauro was mentioning, many of those products, if not almost all the products, they have a functional safety SIL integrity level recognition assessed by third-party assessment. And the assessment and also the data that you can get out of this, let's say, assessment reports is all filtered into the safety manuals for the end users to use that data, in able to know how to install, how to maintain, how to test it, And that's all the information that we will discuss here today in this webinar. So note that for every compliant product after April 2010, you shall be provided with a safety manual. What is now in such a safety manual? Well, the functions or the functional specification of the functions inside that element being performed. Maro was just showing there some slides with also products portfolio. One of them was the safety relays. Like GMI has several safety relays. They have safety relays with normally open contacts. They have safety relays with normally closed contact. They even have a safety relay with also a line monitoring with a kind of a diagnostics inside the system itself. Now, when you have a normally open contact, means the safety function is to open the contact. That is a simple item to be described. But for the more complex items, such as these barriers or these isolators, the safety function that they perform inside such an interface needs to be described for the end user to know what exactly is the functionality of safety that is claiming that safety integrity level. Also, the identification of the hardware and software to enable the configuration management, because one of the items which is not covered here today, but is called functional safety management. If you would look into the functional safety management of the IEC 61511, which is for the process industry, which is for the end users or the operating company, well, one of the items is called the SIS configuration management. That means you need to have a clear record of all the revisions of hardware slash software slash firmware of your SIS that is actually trying to prevent your hazards from happening in the factories. The constraints and the assumptions on its use, that's another item. I give you a simple example. I've got in mind some safety PLC vendor that has a constraint. That means when they have some internal failures inside that system, there is a certain constraint in terms of time. Well, those are items that needs to be explained in the safety manual, which were not easily being, let's say, made aware to the customers before 2010, before the edition 2 was out of the 61508. For every function, you will have things like, for instance, HFT stands for hardware fault tolerance. In other words, how many dangerous failures can you tolerate and still achieve your safety function? That is one of the items that needs to be described in your safety manual. You also will have in the safety manual a description if your device that the vendor will give to you is a type A or a type B, and that will have two different decisions if you go for a Road 1 compliance or a Road 1H compliance in the IEC 61508 standard will work with the safe failure fraction. So those data that you see over here, SD stands for safe detected, safe undetected, danger detected, danger undetected. That is classically coming out of an FMEA or an FMEDA that they have made as an analysis on the equipment to start to investigate what is the safety integrity or what is the fail-safe design or the diagnostic coverage that you have in such type of systems. That will also be explained here inside your safety manual. Information about the proof test coverage. Typically, when I'm teaching the training classes, which I just finished my last week training this week for the TOV Rhineland courses, typically I'm always showing them the book from GMI, which is the SIS or the SIL manual, and in there is a clear example on what, for instance, in the safety manual from GMI, they are advising you on how and what to do in terms of proof test. And they are, for instance, they're giving an example. If you do test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can claim a proof test coverage of 30%. If you do the additional 5 tests, they claim you can do up to 99%. So those are kind of information that you as an end user or an engineer using that device will never know yourself unless the specialist vendors, that means the hardware or software developer specialists from the companies, will put that type of information inside a safety manual. And then the second last bullet here is a systematic capability. That is kind of a quality measurement of the rigorousness of design, as well as for hardware, as for software, which is coming from the hardware and software part 2 and part 3, part of the 61508. And there are clear tables in there to show how to control the failures and how to avoid the failures. If the vendor will comply to this, they will simply get an definition on their system that they are compliant to an SC1 or an SC2 or an SC3. For every compliant item, the safety manual shall contain also, if there is some software inside, means read firmware-based systems. Well, you need to have the safety function integrity, what functions are and what constraint and evidence they have proven that that firmware functionality inside the system will comply to a certain safety integrity. The attributes of an element that shall be defined, what the integrator potentially shall consider. Configuration revisions and backward compatibilities needs to be also explained inside the safety manual if your device would have some firmware. And I'm just thinking about a hard or a smart transmitter. If you have a hard or a smart transmitter, which is of course based on firmware, things like, for instance, the revision of the firmware where this report, or let's say the safety manual was based on, needs to be mentioned also here in such a manual. Okay, Mauro, we have the first poll question coming in, and I can read the poll question for you. So the poll question is here. I would like the participants that is following the webinar here make a selection, and the question is, if a manufacturer of a safety product that is compliant to the IEC 61508 shall provide, and the first option is, shall provide a third-party certificate of the IEC 61508 to prove compliance. That is the first answer, A. B, shall provide you with a safety manual explaining that the product, as per the 61508, is compliant. That is answer number B. C, shall provide you with a SIL certificate and a test report of that certificate. That is the answer C. Answer D, all of the above. And to make it easy, none of the above. So which one would you select would be your, let's say, answer to the question, what shall a manufacturer, as per 61508 requirements, supply to you? And we leave a bit more, but we have still a group that has not clicked the button. There's no prize to win. There is no money to lose. So just give us your interaction, that we know that we are not talking here to a screen. There are some people following. I think, Mauro, we're getting close to a good score. I think you can stop, Mauro, if you want. And you can share the results. Okay, so we had 7% saying that a third-party certificate of the IEC 61508 compliance shall be provided. That is unfortunately not correct, and I will explain that together with the SIL certificate in a minute. The safety manual explaining that the product as per 61508 shall be provided. Here we had 14%, and I would say that is the correct answer. That's the only correct answer. The SIL certificate plus test report of the certificate is not a normative requirement. I can tell you that the 61508 standard does not know the word certificate. They do not know what is a SIL certificate in the standard. What does a standard know? That for, depending on the level of SIL, the IEC 61508 is asking the manufacturers to show an assessment. An assessment on the product is basically done on a reference, and the reference in this case is typically the 61508. So for a SIL 1, the manufacturer shall provide an independent assessment from an independent person. For a SIL 2, it's from an independent department. But for a SIL 3, and that is the only one for a SIL 3, the 61508 is requiring a third-party assessment, which is typically leading into a result. The result is then being called a certificate. It's a piece of paper where they make a statement that the assessment was made based on the 61508. But that's not a normative requirement to have a certificate like most of the vendors have. Certification between vendors is purely because of competition between each other. So the only thing that the IEC 61508 standard is caring about is one, assessments. So for SIL 1, independent person, for SIL 2, independent department, for SIL 3, independent organization, and that's it. But what does a standard, regardless of the SIL level, always mandatory requires is a safety manual. And that is the correct answer since April 2010. All right, Mauro, let me go to the next one. Example of a GMI safety manual. So the safety manual that GMI will have on all their devices will explain to the end users or the, let's say, clients on how to install the device. And you would say, well, we can see it's an interface, it's digitally mounted. Yeah, but maybe you have to follow special instruction. You may have to respect certain distance between your interface and maybe your cable ducts above or below the module. That is one. Maybe some of the modules you have to install them horizontal. Maybe the other ones you are allowed to install them vertical or horizontal. It all depends on what type of systems they are. They also will explain how to operate, how to maintain, how to proof test. Because if you look at such a device, and if it would be, for instance, a safety relay like the one they show over here, well, the question is, how will you actually have to test it to prove the system is still working as per design? Then the failure rate explanation, they will tell you by some specialist, let's say they will show you, for instance, all the safe and all the danger failures, failure in time, we call this, that's the FIT, which is 10 to the minus 9. They will also explain to you the use for life, etc. of such a interface. The second topic here for today is still in the same context of safety manual, but what many people does not know yet is that the edition 2 of the 6.15.11, which is actually out since 2016/2017, so the current valid edition 2 for the process industry to achieve functional safety with a safety instrumented system is now requiring, in addition to, a functional safety manual. And I want to underline the word functional safety manual. And that safety manual can only be made by the organizations or the companies that are actually making the integration of several different subsystems from different vendors together. Because one vendor like GMI, for instance, cannot give you the functional safety manual for the entire loop. If GMI only provides you with the safety, let's say, barrier, or maybe with the safety relay, they can only give you the safety manual as per the 6.15.08. But the functional safety manual is nothing more than a customized functional story to explain how all those interfaces, all those subsystems are being configured together. Because end of the day, when the maintenance engineer is opening the cabinet or is actually being required to do a proof test on that safety loop, that person will have to know how he or she can test the loop, and that should be coming out of a functional safety manual. Of course, in the functional safety manual, the main input will come from the safety manual based on the 6.15.08. And the definition of functional safety manual is deviating from the definition of the IEC 6.15.08, which is in part 4, which is the abbreviation and the definitions of the standard, because they want to differentiate that functional means it's coming for the process sector, process industry, whereas the safety manual, that is coming from the manufacturer industry, which is totally two different contexts. So the functional safety manual purpose is, as I told you already, to help the engineers, to help the end users, to help the operators of the SIS, and to help the maintenance people of the SIS to prove that they can still achieve the performance of the target of the SIL level of that specific safety function. It is certainly customized, so it can be done either with the system integrators who are integrating the systems, or if the EPC is doing a turnkey solution, it can be done by the EPC contractors themselves, that they will have to collect all this good data and give it filtered down into a document called Functional Safety Manual as customized per project, per client, per SIF. My recommendation is to identify typical some loop configurations, like for instance, you could say we have a 1 out of 1, we have a 1 out of 2, we have a 2 out of 3, etc. And as per templates that you will then consider that you can use in that project, there you could then make an additional data sheet that is referring into that template. That is just one of my recommendations that I would like to give to you. Example for a safety instrumented function, as you can see here, we have selected different vendors. We have here 2 interfaces from GMI. The challenges will be that every subsystems can have different proof test requirements. I give you a simple example. The final element may be tested every 9 months. The solenoid in between may be tested every 2 years. That interface safety relay could be maybe tested as a requirement from the vendor of GMI may want to ask you to do it every 20 years. The safety PLC here in the middle, they may require you to do a power off and power on every 10 years, which is a classical proof test that would be required for such type of systems. Maybe here the isolator of the barrier is maybe every 10 years as an example. And maybe your smart or hard transmitter is maybe every 3 years. So the question is, how does the end user know how he will have to test this? Because all the vendors are all having different requirements on how frequent you should test them and able to prove they are still working as per design. So all depending on the mission time of your SIF, that needs to be customized, and that based on the availability and based on your risk reduction factor that you require to have on this loop, that will actually identify in your functional safety manual information to the maintenance engineer on how frequent do they have to test that type of safety instrumented function. What we also want to have is that for every single subsystem, we need to have the exact number or exact model number of the revisions of both hardware and also potentially of firmware. That's one of my classical topics in my training classes. When I'm teaching those classes and there are some end users in the training class, I'm asking them, how many of you have the correct firmware today of all the safety loops that are controlling your plant? Do you have a list of all the different firmwares, or do you have a list of one firmware that is controlling your entire site? So 99% of all the end users have no clear view currently what is controlling their safety loop today in their process applications. One point will also come later in the, not in this webinar, but another webinar is called the Cybersecurity and Security Risk Assessments. So firmwares and the entire digital footprint needs to be also have a very close, let's say, assessment, and needs to be very clearly recorded and also be managed in terms of configuration. What else is in such a functional safety manual? Well, clearly we will have the loop diagrams, we will have the schematics on how those loops are all been working together or have been configured. We need to have the specific constraints that is vendor related or brand related towards the constraint of the application program. AP stands for the application program. We also will have to have a operational description, including the fail safe and the safe state of every single function. List of limitations and restrictions related to the safety function of the item itself. The manufacturer's recommendations for operator and maintenance in instruction. One of the items that I typically come across is that the final elements, which are typically like shutdown valves, well, they also have a specific useful life. The question is, how long is this valve already installed in your field, and how often have you been using it? In other words, your mission time still is inside the predictive useful life, or have you crossed that? Because typically our end users, they don't like to replace a valve that is still working. They will say, no, we will not touch the valve. As long as it's still working, we will not replace it. In other words, all this prediction of availability, if the useful life and the mission time are not actually fitting to the story, which is the theory where you estimated the availability, doesn't really make sense. All the failure modes and the type of failure rates of the devices will also be listed here in the functional safety manual per subsystem. Also, some data that you may need to predict the availability can also come out of the functional safety manual, because that is the safety manual of the vendor will have that data, and you could actually cross over it here in the functional safety manual. Responses or behavior in response to detected faults and warnings. So when you start to test the systems, you will reveal your danger undetectable failures, and you need to have some aid, some help from the vendors to tell you how to do that, and the measures taken to avoid and control potential systematic failures, including software failures, and if applicable, also some common codes. In the meantime, Maro, I have a question coming in. What is the ideal proof test interval of a safety relay and of a input barrier? Is it related to the proof test interval of particular sieve loops for catering to a certain SIL? Well, my answer would be to this person asking this question, you have to check the proof test interval recommendations first of the vendor detail specification. That means if you refer to a safety relay or a input barrier coming from CMI, that will be found in the safety manual. Once you have that time, that is the recommendation of the liability of the functionality of the device from the vendor like GMI. Then once you have fitted that into a certain configuration, because we do not know how we're going to use that system, we as GMI can only give you an advice on how to test the system and what is the predictive liability, let's say, what is the predictive useful life of that kind of system. Based on the level of safety risk reduction factor that you want to use it, that means that if you enter your data into one of your reliability calculation tools, that tool will tell you how frequent you will have to test to loop from end to end. And if you take that one relay out of there from GMI, which I give the example of every 20 years, but your loop end-to-end risk reduction factor enabled to achieve that because of some subsystems are not giving such, let's say, the contribution of failure from some subsystems will be worse. Maybe you will be required to test from end to end every 1 year. That means a safety relay that is part of your safety loop. Maybe you will test from your digital output module from your safety PLC towards your solenoid, and that may have to be done maybe every year and able to prove that your solenoid is still moving as an example. That means that the frequencies of the entire loop is clearly depending on all the subsystems availability or the reliability data. Whereas the vendor itself, they purely give you an advice, what is the useful life, what is their reliability, how long you can use that system before the vendor like GMI will recommend to test it. All right, Maro, we are on the next poll. Oh, we don't hear you, Maru. I don't know why. Maybe you turn off the microphone. I see your lips moving. If you can just share it, I will read the question for you. Okay, I still don't hear you, Maru. Do you still hear me? Yeah, I can see that you launched the poll. Okay. Doesn't matter, we will manage. Okay, so a project that needs to comply to the IEC 61511 standard and is using only IEC 61508 compliant devices. So this is a bit of a tricky question here in this poll. You have a project, you have to comply to the 61511 edition 2 standards and are using purely one by one, all your subsystems are all as per 61508 compliant devices. Then per device, a safety manual is required. That means per subsystem or per device, you need to have a safety manual. B, a functional safety manual is required on the CIF or CIS level. C, both A and B above. So you need to have a safety manual per device, and you need to have a functional safety manual provided on the complete CIS or CIL level. And both A and B above. I can see that no one is answering the poll, Mauro. Something is not correct. No? What is happening? It looks like your poll has no interaction, and I cannot launch the poll because I don't have the poll here with me, I think. Or do I also have to have the poll? Let me quickly check, Mauro. Maybe I can relaunch the poll myself. Let me end that poll and I will launch it again. Sorry for that. Sorry for the technical issues. Can someone do me a favor? Can someone try to see if we can click? If not, then we just will quit the poll. It seems like I lost Maru now. So everything is going from bad to worse. That's a Murphy's Law. It is my last webinar, so I'm not getting nervous. I will just mind went in. Okay, so why did I not see that? That's a question. I cannot see the question with the poll. Okay, so definitely there is something wrong. Okay, I will end the poll because it looks like it doesn't work. Sorry for that. I see that people are reacting. So one could answer, the other one could not answer, which is strange for me. But anyhow, let's see if Maru will come back or not. The Yeah, I see that some people have trouble. So let's just forget about the poll. It's just to see if there's some interaction, but apparently we have some difficulties. What is now the summary here of this today's webinar? I want you to understand the difference between a safety manual for the manufacturers, like as an example, GMI, which is the 61508, which is the edition 2, 2010, versus here the functional safety manual, which is the IEC 61511, which is the 2016-2017 release, which is the edition number 2. And the safety manual, as I told you in the webinar itself, it is not a requirement from the IEC 61508 at all to have a certificate. Certification between vendors is purely to prove a certain, let's say, status, or to try to create some competition between each other. The IEC standard does not even know the word certificate. If you would search in the standard, the 61508, you would search the word certificate, then you would not find anything. So the only thing that the 61508 will know, let me just see if Mauro, I make him again a co-host. Can you turn on the microphone, Mauro, see if you are alive again?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, sorry for the inconvenience.
It's okay.
I had to quit and re-enter. This is typical way to solve the Microsoft problems. Anyway, sorry for that.
I actually stopped the poll because I got some people in the Q&A saying they could enter, the other one could not, so I just stopped it. Okay, I'm sorry for that. So the 61508 is not knowing anything about certification, but what you really should start to understand now, since 2010 April, edition 2 was launched, which is the normative requirement for all the vendors in safety business, making a statement of SIL 1, 2, 3, or 4. Well, you can only make a statement based on an assessment. The assessment reference document is, of course, called the 61508. And if a vendor explains to you or claims to you that they comply to the 61508, then that vendor shall have a safety manual provided to you together with the device making that statement. That is number 1 bullet over here. And you have to look into that safety manual because there will be very valuable data and information in there. Things like how do you have to test it? How do you have to maybe start it up or reset or something like that? So all this information will be as per subsystem/device that shall be inside the safety manual that the vendor shall provide to you. The right-hand side is the functional safety manual. So what I was showing in the webinar, what they have done in the edition 2 of 2016-2017 of the 61511, they changed the word safety manual. They added in front functional safety manual to clearly make a difference between the functionality of your entire configuration versus the single device or subsystem device function, like in the safety manual, like for instance of a safety relay or a barrier or an isolator from GMI. So the functional safety manual, as the word is saying, it can only be made as customized by the organization who is actually configuring or building such type of systems. Every single safety instrumented function shall have detailed instructions. And I know that sometimes people will say, well, actually, that's an overlap. We already have that information sitting in our safety requirement specification. It doesn't really matter how you call the document for me, as long the end user or the maintenance engineers, they know exactly how to prove that their systems are still in compliance to the risk reduction factor performance that was estimated that you would need in able to prevent the hazard from happening in the field. As Mauro was saying, we also had this last icon on the product slides, which is not a product but a service. So we do provide you with 61511 lifecycle support. We are actually currently still providing function safety management to some of the customers, because in function safety management is a normative requirement also from the edition 2 of the 61511. We also have specific in project-related business. We are helping with the PHRAs. We are doing some LOPA. We're doing some prediction of availability of systems by SIL determination and also some SIL verification. We also sometimes assist, not so often anymore, but we sometimes assist with safety requirement specification. And we also have another group which is actually specialized in industrial security management and assessment based on the OT security standard, which is called the IEC 62443. Besides this, one of the roles that I'm playing or I'm helping GMI with is I'm providing the TOV Rhineland accreditation competency review program called Functional Safety Engineer SIS. That is the training that I think now I'm actually due for end of the year to make a complete summary of all the training that I have been provided. But I estimate somewhere around 190 trainings worldwide over the last 15 years. I estimate about 2,700 people that I've been training myself with this program. The Fundamentals of Cybersecurity is a newer program which we have launched the beginning of this year. It was on the books for 2020, but then the pandemic came in, so then we stopped the program again, but we have relaunched it this year. I'm happy to say that we have actually done a handful of fundamental cybersecurity trainings in the meantime, both virtual and also classroom style. And the last one is here, the cyber risk assessment, which is the new requirement from the SIC 1511. You shall carry out a security risk assessment on your industrial automation control system. That's here the IACS. We have a training course for this also. Both the fundamental and also the security risk assessment is also under license from TOV Rhineland accreditation. That means that once you pass the exams on all these 3 courses, you will be awarded a personal certificate on your own name. With the note that I want to make that you have to pass first the fundamentals of cybersecurity before you will be allowed to do the exam of the cyber risk assessment. We also do customized in-house trainings. I was just explaining tomorrow, I'm actually with a specific company now worldwide. We are launching in-house trainings for all their teams who are actually involved in activities for functional safety. And next year, we already have a new schedule for 2022. We will provide you with some more webinars to follow. That's the book that GMI is also providing, that if you are interested in that type of book, you could send us an email. And then it's also the link on the website of GMI itself, where you can actually request one of copies of this book. I think we have more than, in the meantime, more than 50,000 plus books worldwide being sent out. Okay, I will stop this model. I will stop sharing and I will leave it back to you because I know we have some Q&A. We have some questions collected during the registrations that I have been preparing some answers for.
Yes, can you confirm that you see the presentation?
Yes, I see the presentation.
Okay. So the first page, as said, we collected some questions during the registration of this webinar, maybe from other webinars. So we collected the most interesting question, and now we go through. It's only 5 questions, so it will be even short. And again, let me try. Okay, yes, this is the first question, Tino.
Okay, who will prepare / develop the functional safety manual for SIS projects? And this came from a specific registration. I think he's also online today. And the question was, is that the task for the EPC, for the MAC, or for the operator, or for the owner? Probably he means the end user or the operating company. Yes, Maru, thank you. So who will prepare? I know if you are the engineer who is actually in this type of projects, it's always trying to get out of it and saying it's not my job, should be someone else's job. I don't really care whose job it really is. End of the day, we need to have a functional safety manual which is customized on the project. And then the question is, who is responsible to actually combine all those equipment together? I give you an example. If I'm a system integrator and I'm buying the safety PLC, and I'm doing the marshalling, and I'm doing the, the cabinet layout, and I'm buying the barriers and the isolators and the relays all from GMI, and I'm buying the power supply. Well, my scope of supply will be from terminal strip to terminal strip. So that system integrator needs to give a functional safety manual from terminal strip to terminal strip. I'm sending my cabinet on site. I may send a commissioning engineer to help the commissioning, etc. But there the EPC contractor is maybe doing a turnkey, or maybe the Mac is doing a turnkey. That means they are buying or having that cabinet shipped from that system integrator. But the EPC contractor has selected what type of sensors they will buy, what type of end final elements they have been connecting to it. That means that when the EPC contractor is actually starting to put the puzzle together, well, I guess it's the EPC contractor's duty for the end user who pays money for that to get a functional safety manual, because the end user needs to get a functional safety manual from the company who is delivering the system. So if this is a puzzle that you have all different kind of systems coming in, well, someone will have to put the puzzle together and needs to give a functional safety manual per functionality of the safety instrumented system. Right. I think your safety manual is one of the best ones. Well, that's actually a nice comment. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mauro, next one.
Yes, let me. Okay, yeah.
What is the purpose of a safety manual and what information should it contain? Well, I actually recognize that question and I know that I already have answered, but it may not hurt that people will hear it twice. So yes, Mauro. Okay, for every single SIG 1508 compliant device, as already mentioned, the manufacturer shall provide you a safety manual. There is no excuse, there is no but. If you have a vendor selling you a device or a unit or a product without a safety manual, it's not a SIG 1508 compliant vendor, period. The definition of the safety manual comes from a standard. Please note that some manufacturers are combining or merging the normative safety manual information sometimes in instruction manual. So I've seen different vendors where they have a title on the document and it may be called installation guidance / safety manual. So sometimes they will mix those good information onto one document, but the safety manual information is normative in Annex D in both the hardware section part 2 and the software section part 3 of the SIG 1508. And there is no excuse for me. If I have a vendor claiming SIL X, I will search where can I find that data. And if the data is somewhere in a document without the title safety manual, I'm not really getting worried so much. But I'm more worried if I don't get the data as per the standard. And that is always what I'm trying to refer to. You shall be provided with that data regardless what the title of the document is. The purpose is to provide a clear description on the functional specification of the safety function being performed, how to install, how to maintain, how to test, how to proof test, and how to prove that your safety performance is still being achieved or is still being guaranteed. Yes, Mauro.
Let me try. Here it is.
IEC 61511 is the wrap around of IEC 61508. Okay, I'm just trying to think about, is the wrap around or is the 61508 the wrap around the 61511? Then why are different from each other? Oh, okay, well, I think that's an easy one to answer. The first one, the top one, the 61508, I call this a neutral standard. Neutral means I can use it anywhere in the world where I'm trying to predict the reliability of a electrical component, of a electronic component, or of a programmable electronical safety related system. That means the EEPES, that is what you see over here on that slide. So the EEPES, functional safety, for instance, one of the biggest applications that you probably will recognize is in the automobile sector. Because the automobile sector is more and more, the modern cars are full of electronics and they have to build those electronics also very reliable. Otherwise, the casualties, or let's say the fatalities, could be worldwide, could be tremendous. That is why they have to try to build those cars as safe as possible. Of course, you are still the driver. You can still be a bad driver, crashing and killing people. But the reliability of the equipment, like for instance, if you have the modern cars full of electronics and microchips, they have to make sure that those will not cause any problem for your car. Same in the aviation. All the aviations, the current aviations itself, you know, the time of steam cables to control the flaps of the wings, that is in the old planes maybe still true. But the modern aircrafts, like all the modern, if it is now Boeing or Airbus, is all controlled through computers, through CPUs. They have to be controlled very reliable. So anywhere where there's a product supplier or a manufacturer using this type of EEPS and they try to prove that they are reliable, 61508 is the standard to go for. 61511 is something totally different. I wouldn't call it a wraparound to 61508. I would say no. The 61511 is a standard mainly made for the process industry, not for the car industry, not for the nuclear or the railway or the aviation. It's only for the process industry. And what was new by the 61511 edition 2, they added the pharmaceutical business on it, plus also the food and beverage. So the oil and gas, chemicals, petrochemicals is still in there, but they added 2 new, let's say, applications to it. One is the pharmaceutical, the other one is the food and beverage. So this is mainly a standard to explain to the end users operating companies of such type of applications how to build functional safety or how to achieve functional safety using a safety instrumented system. And the normative requirement here is the functional safety manual, where the normative requirement in the 61511 was the safety manual. Sorry, in the 61508 was the safety manual, in the 61511 is the functional safety manual. Yes, Maro. Oh,
yeah, in fact, this is not a question. This is just reminding us to remind that yeah, we have several others webinars. We are at the end today, right now. We have many other webinars on different topics and subjects. So the recommendation is to follow us and to follow our website to check out whether there is something upcoming which is of interest for you. Again, as said before, in case you missed some part of this webinar, you have the chance through our YouTube channel to recall it and review it later. Okay, it will be on our channel. I think from tomorrow on. By the way, before I was disconnected, I was also checking the couple of safety manuals from our website, and I'm referring to the question which was given before about what is the typical test-proof interval. And I can answer easily, simply, that I took a relay, and typical this is 14 years to keep the C3 level, while on the barrier we are almost similar, 10 to 12 years, depending on the models. But you find, as Tino was saying, these on our safety manuals, and you can find our safety manuals online on our website. You can download at any time. That's here. I'm here with the very last question. We would like to know from you how we did, how we perform, how was this webinar, and of course you can leave us some message if you see the necessity of some improvement. Okay, of course we are here listening you. You will receive the PDF format, so you will have also our email address. If you have any recommendation, you just drop us an email and we take care. I would like to say thank you very much, and I would do that by sharing the result of this very last poll. So I think, Tino, you did excellent. You did very good. So thank you very much.
Maro, yes? I get one question. Well, I think it's more like a general question, and the person is asking webinar on industrial cybersecurity. We have done several of them this year. So if you would go to the YouTube channel of GMI, you will find the webinar on industrial cybersecurity. But I'm sure that next year we probably gonna have some additional cybersecurity webinars, as functional safety for some people starts to get boring. Not for me, but for other people. So maybe we have to change a little bit of our way we are doing the webinars, and I'm sure that the cybersecurity will certainly be on the topics for next year. Sorry, Maro.
Okay, no, I think I shared the result of the poll, correct?
That is shared now.
Ah, okay, I didn't share. I thought I was sharing.
That's okay.
So, nothing to add. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your feedback. It's really appreciated. And again, you have the chance through the email to send us any comment. We will take care. And even if you have any issue or question or something that you would like to understand on the use of our product, again, you just drop us an email and we will support you. So again, thank you very much. So see you next time, next webinar.
Stay healthy, stay safe.
Stay healthy, yes.
And have a good Christmas period coming up.